Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the ISSC M22. Okay, so I just got this pistol back from the range, so it's a little dirty. But, we can still talk about it. Now, the first thing you're going to notice about it is that it looks very much like a Glock. Now, it isn't a Glock clone. A lot of people call it a Glock clone. It is not a Glock clone. Even though there's a lot of aspects that look similar to a Glock, its function is very different. It does have a polymer lower. The top is, the slide is some kind of aluminum alloy of some type. It's not steel, that's for sure. It's not stainless steel. And it has a coating on there that's pretty decent. The sight picture on the sights is very Glockish. Instead of having a dot up front, it's square. I kind of like that. I like that a lot, actually. It's easy to pick up, and I don't like round things on sights. I like square things on sights. The rear sight is very much like Glock with that U shape. It's very easy to see. It works just fine. The magazine release is very easy to get to. The magazines on this are very decent. The controls are very easy to get to and nice and easy to get to. Like the slide release, I can get to it no problem. Depending on my grip, I can easily operate both the magazine release and the slide release. The gun is very Glock 48-ish. It's very slim. The grip size is very much like the Glock 48, except it's got more of a Gen 3 appearance with this finger groove thing going on here. It's long enough where I can get pretty much my entire hand on there. It isn't too long, isn't too short, seems to fit me just fine. It's also unique in that it's not a striker fired gun. And you can see it right here, right? There's a big hammer sticking out of there. So it's a single action pistol, even though it's got like the standard Glock looking trigger with the dongle in the middle, with that little safety there. But it is a single action pistol, but it has a decocker. So that is really weird. That's unique. I can't think of another handgun that's single action and has a decocker on it. Like, it's not double action. It's got a magazine safety on it. So even in fire mode, see that? There's no cocking of the hammer. You have to cock it manually in order for this to fire. Very weird, eh? So yeah, decock it, and then when you're ready to fire, cock it like that, pull on the trigger. So that's really weird compared to like a Glock. It's nothing like that. Also, I think this particular company got sued by Glock, or was threatened to be sued by Glock, and they had to make a couple of changes to it. This is a second gen version. So it doesn't quite look the same as the others. Like, it's got a round trigger guard on the front. It's one of the things that they were told to do to make it look visually different from a Glock. But other than that, the fit is very nice. I enjoy shooting the pistol. It's very comfortable. It's not super wide like a Glock 17. It's thinner like a Glock 48. So somebody with less than large hands like me, this is very comfortable for me. It doesn't dig in. Like the corners here don't dig into my hand like they do on a full-size Glock. The magazines are very good. I mean, they're metal. You can take them apart. You can clean them. They got this little dude down here that you can pull on to load rounds in, to keep finger off your thumb, or keep finger off your thumb, to keep pressure off your thumb, so you don't have sore thumbs at the end of the day. And I didn't have any problems at all with the magazines during the testing. So accuracy wise, is it accurate? Well, I'd say it is. I didn't take any tests with the paper, but I didn't have any problems hitting an 8-inch gong at 25 meters. So that's pretty good for me. I mean, the trigger on this is really nice. It's crisp. The trigger weight is very light. I haven't tested it yet, but it's definitely probably in the sub 4 pounds of trigger pull. It's very nice. And of course, since it's single action, there's no creep. It's a very nice trigger. The break is very nice. So between the barrel, which I think is made by Lothar Walther, and the trigger and the decent sights, you can expect to see some pretty good groups out of this. Now, is it reliable? Well, that seems to be the Achilles heel for these pistols. Now, the Gen 1s were notorious for light primer strikes, failure to eject, and failure to feed. And a whole bunch of them went back to the factory for rework. And yeah, it wasn't good. It was a very unreliable pistol, and people complained about it. There is a break-in period for these where you're supposed to use a CCI mini mag or another high velocity 22 cartridge to give it, first couple of hundred rounds to break it in. But that didn't seem to work for a lot of people. It was very unreliable. But they made some changes for Gen 2, and this is a lot better. I bought it used. I think the guy who owned it before me had pulled it apart. There was some slight marring to the Phillips head screws here, and there was Loctite on them. I don't know if that came that way from the factory. And the firing pin had been cleaned up. I think he had gone over it with some fine emery cloth or sandpaper or something like that, because the finish is quite worn on it, and I think it's been smoothed up. So that was him. He didn't, as far as I can tell, okay, this is super dirty, but he didn't do anything to the feed ramp, and he didn't do anything to the ejector. These are two things that most people do to theirs to increase its reliability, and that work hasn't been done to this. And this feeds actually pretty well if you use good quality ammunition in it. Now mine, this particular one, it does have a light strike problem where the hammer it's not very strong. Like, you do get a good impression on the brass, but it's not super duper. It's not like a super solid strike. And even with the best ammunition I was using, which was CCI standard, I was seeing, I don't know, a failure to fire every third magazine, maybe 2 to 3 for in a row. I don't know what's going on there. It looked like, I can't tell the difference between a bad strike and a good strike. They all look the same, so I don't think it's the firing pin. Maybe that issue, maybe him cleaning it up was enough to remedy most of the problems. But I can't tell. I can't see any issue at all, other than maybe the hammer spring is a little light. It needs to have a heavier spring. But good luck trying to find one. There's a company in the United States that makes a heavier spring, but of course I don't live in the United States. I live in Canada, and then there's issues. A lot of small companies don't want to send parts to across the border to international orderers. So that is an issue. Getting parts for this gun is extremely difficult here in Canada, and it's difficult in the United States, from what I can tell. If you go on the internet and try to find parts, you won't find many. You'll find a few bits and pieces here. Even a place like Numrich, they have a couple of slides and a trigger, but no springs, and no firing pins, and none of the stuff that actually normally breaks or that you have issues with. So it's all missing. That's a downer. So if you've got a pistol that's a Jam-O-Matic, you got really unlucky and you got a bad one, you're kind of out of luck. There isn't much that you can do. So that is an issue. Now, I wouldn't recommend buying one of these for sporting purposes. Like, if you're using it for competition, I would stay away. Because this one in particular is good enough for plinking. You know, if you want to go on the to the range for a Sunday afternoon and shoot some beer cans or some plates or whatever, and just have some fun, then it's fine. You know, it's not a big deal if you pull the trigger and it goes click and it doesn't go off. You just cock the hammer again, and 90% of the time it'll go off by itself, you know, when for the second strike on the round. That's what I found with CCI. It seemed to work just fine. But if you're doing it in competition, if that happens to you like 4 or 5 times in a match, well, you know, it's time, right? That sort of thing, it adds up, and it affects your time at the end of the day. So I wouldn't use it for competition purposes unless it's not a timed event. Like maybe if you're doing bullseye shooting, then yeah, this might be perfect for that. This might do just fine. But if you're using it for timed competitions, I'd stay away. Is it a good self-defense pistol? Absolutely not. No way. Just no way. Well, it's 22 long rifle, first of all. Even though it's nice and lightweight and compact and easy to use, the fact that it is a 22 long rifle, that it isn't 100% reliable, and that it is single action without a proper safety means that you can't carry this safely in carry mode 1. Like if you this trigger is so light that if you had this in your pocket like this, you know, if you're carrying like a pencil or something like that, or some pocket change, or if you accidentally grab it by accident, this trigger is very light and it doesn't take much to set it off. And there's no way to actually carry it with the safety on. Like it's not like a Glock where it's a striker-fired pistol and there's that slight amount of double action mode to keep it safe while it's cocked. It doesn't have that. All it's got is decocker. So you would have to carry it like this, decocked and in your pocket. So if an emergency popped up, you'd have to grab it and then cock it manually, and then you can fire it. And nah, that's bad. I wouldn't recommend it at all. But this is an option for a low-cost plinker, and it is low cost. You can buy them new for, well, $300 Canadian. I wouldn't recommend that. I think that's overpriced for what you get. I would buy it used for, like, say, under that, in the like $275. Maybe if you got it for $250. As long as it was a Gen 2, then yeah, I think it's definitely worth the risk at $250, but not brand new at $300 something, and then taxes and all that other kind of garbage on top of that. You'd be better off buying a used Ruger or some other 22 pistol that's known for reliability. Unless this looks like the coolest thing ever, you know, for $250, you could buy this used, and then, you know, occasionally if you don't get, if the cartridge doesn't go off and go bang, whoop-de-doo, it's just that you missed the beer can that one time. So definitely for that kind of plinking type of work, yeah, this is a pretty good gun for that. And I would recommend it for that, but not brand new. Also, if it's a Gen 1 with the squared off trigger guard, I would ask the seller to prove to you that it's not a Jam-O-Matic, either through a video or through seeing it personally. Then you know for sure, because there's so many of them that had issues. I'd be very wary about it. But if it's a Gen 2 like this one, then chances are it's going to be fine. So field stripping it and disassembly is actually pretty easy for cleaning. This doesn't have a problem like many 22s where it's a real pain in the butt to open it up and clean it, but this one is pretty easy. It does have a, you know, a takedown lever on both sides, very much like a Glock. I can really see why Glock tried to sue these guys, really. Yeah, you just it's kind of difficult to do when I'm on camera here, but just pull back the slide, do the lock, tilt it up like so, and then the whole thing slides off. There's the recoil spring. The one thing I did notice on this particular pistol is that the sear return spring is really weak. So if you have any heavy oil or grease all in this area, it will slow the return of the sear so much that the hammer won't cock. So that's something you might need to pay attention to. It happened to me a number of times before I figured out what was going on. And I said, wait, what's going on here? How come the hammer isn't recocking? Well, that's because I had goo in here, just like heavyweight oil. And so I had to completely strip it out and then use a different product. I think I used, oh yeah, it's this stuff. I really like it. It's a G96 gun treatment, and it's an oil, but I think it's got silicone in it. So you get that kind of silky residue left on it, but it's not an oil or a thick grease, and that seemed to solve my issue. So don't put grease or oil or anything heavy like that in here. I'd recommend just keeping it dry, or maybe you can use, I don't know, graphite powder or something like that. Something to pay attention to. But overall, the build quality of the pistol, the parts, it's actually pretty good. Like there's no weird burrs or anything like that. The edges on all the parts are nice and rounded and clean. And the trigger's great, and you know, it's actually the build quality on is pretty good. My only issue is that the springs are kind of weak. Like the hammer spring is a little weak. I think that's the issue for my failures to fire. You know, if that was fixed, then maybe this would be a 100% reliable pistol. But that's it. I mean, that's super easy to take down. And then you can actually access this. You can actually get a cleaning rod from the chamber end through it, no problem. So you don't have to do it from the muzzle. And that's kind of nice, right? And it's pretty easy. You just put the spring back on, and then the slide goes on, and you're in business. So easy takedown and reassembly. So that's all I got for you, folks. I think it's a pretty decent pistol for shooting beer cans and maybe for training purposes, you know, training new people to firearms, especially handguns. I think it's a good pistol for that, especially if you can get one used for, say, in the $250 to $300 range. I think it's worth it. So have a good one, folks, and I'll see you out on the range.